All right, everybody, shalom, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show. It's been a long and awesome week. Last week we had snow, and now we only have snow piles left on the roads here in the Gush Etzion and the Judea region of the land of Israel. But I love those snow piles because they are so, strong out there, courageous, holding on to their identity out there in the heat. There's just a strong snow pile. This week's Torah portion is an awesome Torah portion called Truma. The Torah portion, which is Malka tells me to say the word Parsha, right? Which is the part that we read of the Torah, the Bible, and it's all about the vessels of the tabernacle, and it's the blueprint Torah portion. It's one of those blueprint Torah portions where it's going to lay out how to do things, how to make the menorah, how to make the tabernacle, the mizbeach, how to make the showbread table. So really cool stuff, but also a lot of very nitty gritty stuff. And this week's Torah portion is very beautiful. But I thought it was also a great opportunity to talk about something that happened 2 Torah portions ago that I didn't give it the attention that it deserved. And that was the Torah portion of Yitro, and that we didn't get a chance to discuss the 10 commandments fully. And I want to say hi to my very good friends. This is so great because some of my best friends are already here on the show. Moshe Herman says, "Hey, bro. Hey, bro. It's great to see you. I'm so glad you're here." And we're doing our segment right now. And for today's podcast, it's going to come tomorrow's podcast. And Lou Weiss, my good friend and co-producer here, Moshe also producing the show, gets it out to the netwaves. Lou says, "Erev Tov Yishai, looking and sounding good." Great, Lou. Thank you so much for being with us. And Linda says, "Good Chodesh from New York. Thank you. And happy new month." And Michael Menashe says, "Kol hakavod Yishai." I haven't even done anything yet, but he says, all the honor to you. Great. And Ivo says, "Shalom," and many other people are coming on. So here's the deal. Today we got to talk about the 10 commandments. We got to talk about the importance of the 10 commandments. And it was a few years ago that I met Rabbi Schwartz, and he told me about his work with the 10 commandments. And I thought to myself, this is something so important, and I haven't had him on. He's a person who spent 30 years in Aish, teaching in Toronto, teaching Russian Jews, and being a very, very close student of the late, great Rabbi Noach Weinberg. And so he has also taken it upon himself to make the 10 commandments more realistic, more palpable, more of a life trajectory, a life goal. 10 commandments, like, we hear about it, but have we made it like something that's so part of our life? In fact, I'm going to ask Malka I was going to do it before the show. I'm going to ask her to get something from the kitchen because we have a 10 commandments in the kitchen. I'm going to ask her to do it in a second. But Rabbi Shawn Schwartz has done amazing work, and it is a great honor to have him on the show. Rabbi, welcome to the show. Shalom and welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi Shai. Great to be here.
It's great to have you on, and good friends around the world are joining us, including Yitzi Katzowitz, who is he says, "Always nice to see Rabbi before Yishai." I think it's because I was just getting hammered on Twitter by some guy who was calling to take away my smicha for whatever reason. And then, but Yitzi is doing great work at making Jewish Lego, and he's working on the most incredible model of Marat Machpelah that you have ever seen. So we're very, very excited. And Allison says, "Shalom from Mark Pickles," and Allison in Manchester is there, my very good friends, and many more people are coming in, including Shalom from Brazil. Now, Rabbi Shalom Schwartz, 10 commandments. Sometimes I get jealous of people like you. You picked the crowning thing and decided to make it a life goal. Tell me how you got to the 10 commandments as the thing in your life.
Okay, if I can just back up a little bit, because you said you were looking for a segue from this week's Parsha to the 10 Commandments, and it's sort of obvious, but it's not obvious. In other words, it's like, yeah, where are you going to talk about the 10 Commandments in this week's Parsha? It's all about the the Mishkan, the tabernacle, all the different vessels. Where's the 10 Commandments? And the answer is, if somebody said to you, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, did you ever see that film?
Sure.
Okay, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's got the Ark. That's it, the Ark of the Tablets, and it's got such power. And we watch that film, and everybody's thinking, "Wow, if we only find the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Lost Ark. You know where it is? Does anybody know where it is? And there's been searches for it in Africa, and there's all sorts of places that. And I always felt to myself when I heard about this searching for the Lost Ark. Imagine that we actually found it. Okay,
Right.
there's CNN is on the spot, and everybody's looking, and they open up the Ark, and what's in it? The tablets. And what's written on the tablets? The Ten Commandments. And you go, oh, okay, well, we have the Ten Commandments. They're not lost.
Right.
You know, there's this sort of feeling of the mystique around the tabernacle. And it says right at the beginning of the parsha, you're doing all this, so you should put the edut, the testimony, that in the ark, which is at the heart of the tabernacle. The tabernacle is completely all about what's at its heart, which is the Ten Commandments.
Right.
So it's exactly about this parsha. It's the perfect parsha to speak about this, because it actually reveals what the essence of the tabernacle is talking about.
I guess another way of saying what you're just saying is that this week's Torah portion that deals with the ark is about the carrying forth of the Ten Commandments, of taking it with you. Beautiful. Of making it part of the travels of your life.
Beautiful, perfect.
So it is a vehicle for those things. So that really feels great to talk about it now that you made that clear. Okay, so still, how did you personally?
Okay, so how did I get to this?
Yeah.
So the story that I'll share is 2007 on a street corner in Tel Aviv. Okay, that was a turning point in my life on this issue, and I had spent about a year and a half doing research on various things. There are certain things that have bothered me for many years. One of them was the disunity that I was experiencing in the Jewish people. You know, I made Aliyah. I came to Israel from Toronto, Canada, and most Jews in the diaspora, I would say, and it's hard to generalize, but, you know, there's a feeling of, you know, you're a minority amongst the majority, and you're sort of like, there's this feeling of family with Jews, even if they're very different from you. Whereas when I came to Israel, I encountered this sectorialness, this sense of, you know, he's religious, he's not, this one's that, Sephardic, Ashkenazi. There was a lot of division, but not just, divisiveness I experienced in a short period of time. And so it bothered me over the years. So I always had this feeling of what really unifies us as Jews. And you know, I had different various answers to that. And certainly one could argue many things. But the other thing was, I always felt there was always, and I also, in my years of being here in Israel, I encountered such idealism amongst most Israelis. Again, not everyone and not in all situations, but there was this feeling of wanting to make this country what we came back here for. And we came back with a vision. You know, as Rav Noah Weinberg used to say, in 1948, the world was holding its breath. With bated breath, they looked to see, what are the Jewish people going to do now? They're back on the scene. They're back in history. And then we had to go. We had to build roads. We had to build schools. We had to build infrastructure. But, you know, now we have Startup Nation. We have our army. We have a good economy. And it was time to say, well, what kind of vision do we have for, you know, aligning that idealism with making this country the country that we really want it to be. Mm-hmm. And the third thing was, I was always disturbed by, you know, it's a little bit of a state secret, but there's about 1 million Israelis that had left the country since 1948. And I remember when I came back and people asked me, you know, where are you from? I'm from Canada. Really? Why did you make Aliyah? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, life is much easier in Canada. You don't have the army. You don't have this. I have a better standard of living. Why would you act like, because they were asking me as if they couldn't believe someone who had such a, you know, comfortable life in Canada would actually move to such a much more difficult life. We had this conversation earlier, but, you know, presumably a difficult life in Israel. And I looked at them, I said, I'm coming home. This is my home. But it always disturbed me when I would think about, you know, all the sacrifice and all the miracles that went into the creation of the state of Israel, that many Israelis didn't find staying here. You know, they left. You know, for a certain amount of time, when you'd speak to Israelis outside of Israel, they'd say they only left temporarily. You know, now it's 3 generations, but it's still on our way back. And I believe that, and it's sincere on one level, but it was always disturbing to me. Anyways, on a street corner in Tel Aviv, a woman named Shawn Portugali, who's a kibbutznikit from Kibbutz Magan Michael, so-called secular Jew, who she and her husband, and I had these discussions with them about how do we unify Jews, how do we bring us this idealism together, how do we work on this from secular to religious, all these divisions. So she looked at me, she said, she'd just gotten out of the car and she looked and she said, Shalom, I've been thinking about what you're looking for. I understand what you're looking for. You don't have to create it. It's already there.
Mm.
It's the 10 Commandments. The Aseret Dibrot in Hebrew, the 10 Commandments. And I looked at her and she said, don't you realize that's it? That's what the 10 Commandments answer all these questions that you've been troubled by. They are this thing that unifies all Jews and certainly all Israelis. It gives us this connection to creating. It's like a vision. It's a national vision for how the country should look. Imagine if we're all keeping the 10 Commandments. What would this country look like? She said one thing, though. Said, and not only that, she said that you might think, well, the average secular Israeli doesn't feel, it's too religious for them. But she said, you're wrong. The average secular Israeli like me feels that it's ours. The Aseret Dibrot are actually, these 10 Commandments actually express who we are, our identity. And I looked at her, I said, Sharon, I was really literally in shock.
It is sometimes a woman's necklace, for example. Like my wife has maybe 2, I think, necklaces of the 10 Commandments. I mean to say that in some ways the 10 Commandments is a index of laws, but in other ways it's also an identity. It's also something that you can identify yourself with. I am a follower of these things. This is the code that I live by.
Totally. And I'll add to that I subsequently found a statement from the rabbis. It relates to what you were saying earlier, that it says that before the 10 Commandments were imprinted on the stones, on the stone tablets, they were actually imprinted on the souls of the Jewish people at Sinai. And we Israelis actually said it. It's the 10 Commandments, that's us. It's an expression of identity. And like you said, you ever think of it as making it a life goal, it's much more than that. It's literally an expression of our identity. It's imprinted on our souls as sort of a spiritual and moral DNA code that we can align ourselves with. And when you see the depth of that and you see the level of identification that, especially in Israel, they have with that, it's actually quite obvious that it's something that's been overlooked for all these years as a force for unity, a force for positive change, and ultimately an expression of who we are.
Okay, so you've taken this kind of ideology towards the development of a website and a curriculum for schools, and they have entered the schools here in Israel. And you also have ways to get people on board through a website that's aseretglobal.org, ASERET, Aseret, which means 10. global.org, like the 10 Commandments, but globally.org. And I'm putting that up right now for people to see. And I saw that you could join classes and you can bring a curriculum to your school. So you've done a lot of work on that. And what I want to do is I want to spice it up a little bit, right? Because the 10 Commandments are kind of famous on the one hand, but maybe they're not kind of famous in another hand. And I will tell you a little story that happened to me just like a month ago. No, it must have been 2 months ago. I was in Miami for a conference called the IAC, the Israel America Coalition. And it was in a great lobby. It was a great hotel and a nice lobby there. And I met a guy that I met from a different conference. His name is Mark Goldman. And Mark Goldman says to me, I don't know how we got talking about this. He's like, today, there are parts of the cultural world. He named them, I think in his words, they were the progressives and other things. But he says they want to go against every one of the 10 Commandments. So, it sounds hyperbolic. And then he started listing and he said to me, and I wrote it down. What Mark Goldman said to me. He said to me, murder. He says that's late-term abortion. They want to get rid of babies that are already fully formed and kill them off. That's murder, and that's legal murder. He says theft, Shoplifting has become practically legal in parts of California, where you're like not going to be prosecuted for a theft of less than $900, something like that. And it's just like, you see, theft is legalized. Coveting, he says, tax the rich, right? Take from one person and give it to another person. That's coveting. He says parents have no specific rights anymore. Don't trust the parents. That's an old 60s term. Remember, don't trust anybody over 30. So honor your parents is thrown out the window. Media, they are machines of bearing false witness, says Mark Goldman. Shabbat, he said something interesting. I don't know if I took good notes on that. He said, every day is like Shabbat. Every day is the Sabbath. You can, you're not supposed to work too much, and thereby killing the idea of Shabbat. And he says, there's also, it's a society of no repercussions, which means there's no God. Nobody's really looking at you. You do what you want. And that's some of the ways that he said to me that there are elements of society that are today anti the Ten Commandments specifically. And another example of that, and I don't mean to badmouth a whole powerful hegemon, but it seems like China is a machine that has its ideology, but one of its ideologies, its main one, is you're not allowed to have religion in China, and its global influence could have that as well. And so there's like a godlessness in this juggernaut that has influence all over the world. So I wanted to spice things up a little bit and say to you, okay, here's a guy who says there are elements that are anti-Ten Commandments. What's your answer to that? What do you think? Is that true? Are there people that are picking up the Ten Commandments and saying, I'm going against this? And is there a kind of contra world, which is maybe what you're bringing, to say, no, let's make this real in our lives?
It's a very, I happen to know Mark. I think it's a very powerful, very beautiful and powerful observation. There is a book that David Kingsley is his name, wrote on showing how America is basically breaking all the Ten Commandments. And it's a 300-page book. You get very depressed by reading it. There's actually a 1 or 2 minute video that I once saw called "Breaking All the Ten Commandments Before Breakfast." It's genius. It was a little, it had every one of them, and then it flashed on the screen when you were breaking. Yes, we do break that's the point. It's these are things that are easily broken. Now, having said that, I think that the point of is anybody happy with that? Do we celebrate these? Shoplifting is rampant. Do we sell? These are not. There's a this what's the word I'm looking for? You're sort of, it's a collision course with the Ten Commandments. Like the reason that those things rub us is because they're in the Ten Commandments and they rub against our core values. Right. And the Ten Commandments are meant to be core values. And I love that term because it's something that really speaks to this same point. They're in our core. And when we run up against them and we see somebody, God forbid, violence or stealing or murder, but even adultery, maybe we become, used to it. So there's, there is this thing of sort of, oh yeah, of course, what can you do? But if you really look at it in the face and you say, okay, this is tragic, that people are destroying the fabric of trust in marriage. And when you hear about it with God forbid, a relative or a friend, you go, oh, that's tragic. So it's being in touch with the fact that part of you that is at your core is really not just annoyed, but is screaming. There's part of us that goes, I can't allow that to be. It's unacceptable. And that's the power of identifying them as core values and consciously carrying them. Now, we discussed this earlier. Alan Dershowitz was on record as saying that there's only 9 commandments that are applicable today in America. You forget about the last one, don't covet. The whole society is built on coveting, on advertising that is basically preying on your desire to covet. That's what the capitalist society is. Forget about it. Let's deal with 9.
Well, I would take a little issue with that, because I would just say one of the beauties of the America that I knew is that actually there was this belief that you too can earn it and get it and live the dream. And you don't have to covet another person's thing. You just have to work hard, and the system will give you a chance. So there was something kind of, and if you go to middle America, you go to, the places that I go to, you still see that it's a very beautiful, there's this, yeah, people want stuff, but they don't want other people's stuff necessarily. They're just living a good and decent and wholesome life. And really in America, I think you're going to find a lot of people who think that the Ten Commandments are indeed a very important part of life.
I agree with you, and I think he's not reading the whole situation. But what it raises is that we the average person is constantly bombarded with information through advertising saying if you don't have X, you're missing out something crucial for your life. If you
Right.
don't look like Y,
Right.
you're not, so the eye culture, the selfie culture, is really preying on, I don't have looks like she does, I wish I
Right.
did. So
Right.
that going into the halachic, the actual legal aspect of the Ten Commandment, don't covet, which is a longer discussion. But clearly, the don't covet has this core principle to it. What we say is, in the mission says, don't look at somebody else in order to get your satisfaction. Where they say, don't try to live someone else's life that's already taken. The only one that you can live is your life. And the
Right.
Mishnah says, Ezu samech bechelko, Ezu hashir samech bechelko. The one who's truly rich is the one who is truly taking pleasure in what he has.
Right.
And we know that our children are bombarded by this, and there's a massive challenge to grow up in an environment like that and truly realize that you have a unique purpose that's been designed for you by God, and all, even the challenges you've been given, are specifically for you. So each of these 10 commandments are meant to be fulfilled not only in avoiding the negative. I'm talking now about the ones that are phrased in the negative form, but the core idea that's really important here is each of these has a positive core value that underlies it.
Yeah.
So in the case of don't covet, it has to do with happiness, and it
Right.
has to do with understanding unique purpose.
Right.
So
Really, one can read it as, and I'm sorry to be pithy, it's not my way, but one could read it as a roadmap to happiness, because every one of them, loving God, honoring God, not bearing false witness, not taking God's name in vain, keeping the Sabbath, honoring your parents. Really, it's a total roadmap to a healthy society and happiness. If you have the Sabbath, that's joy. That is just plain joy. That's the time with your family. That's the richest, thing in your week. Honoring your parents and giving them continued support, and giving them continued life, and having them around for your children. It's just these things make you wealthy. They make you happy. Um, and if there's borders around not doing bad things, uh obviously, like murder, when you, or coveting, you just have these borders, these boundaries, and these boundaries create a happy, fulfilled life. So really, the Ten Commandments you could totally turn it into like simple roadmap for joy in life. You would think everybody would want it.
yeah, and the depth there is extraordinary. I mean, I like to say their Ten Commandments are simple and deep. They're Jewish and universal.
Hmm.
They're timely and timeless. They're all inclusive but very specific, and they're personal and national. They're personal and apply to the society as a whole. So they
Right.
have these dimensions that you're saying that make them very accessible, and an ongoing, what you call an avoda. It's an ongoing spiritual discipline to be able to learn them and fulfill them.
And now, how do you recommend, give us a practical step as to how to bring the consciousness into your life? Like, okay, you know what? I'm hearing Rabbi Shalom Schwartz. Yes, I can see that. That's true, and I haven't put that enough into my mind. Now, give me a practical step about how do I, incorporate that more into my daily routine, my daily life.
Okay, I have a little bit of a way out answer for that. Okay, I mean
Okay.
the simple answer is get a book and read it and start doing it. Take our course. In Hebrew we have some courses. I'm doing podcasts now in English, in Hebrew, pardon me, every week. But I hope to start one soon in English. There's learn about it. That's the simple answer. But I'm going to give
Mhm.
another one that's a little challenging. But I think if we're already on that question, I'm going to share something that actually changed my life about 2 months ago. Okay, on this question,
Okay.
and that's the following. In the temple, we're talking about the Mishkan. In the temple, we know from the Mishnah Tamid that the in the Kohanim every day, as part of, and I'm saying this very specifically based on the Talmud Yerushalmi, as part of Kriyat Shema, they said the Ten Commandments. They said the Ten Commandments every day, and
Mm.
there are many Mefarshim that want to say that wasn't just in the temple; it was part of the service everywhere. What does that mean? So you and I would get up in the morning and we'd say the Ten Commandments. The whole Ten Commandments takes about a minute to say all of the whole text of the Ten Commandments. It's just a short
Right.
little text, followed by the words Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then the next, right after that, it says, love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these things, these things, that I'm commanding you today, you know what that refers to according to the Yerushalmi? The Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten
Uh-huh.
Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And reading that, directly following, you're supposed to put them on your heart. Teach them
Right.
to your children.
Right.
When you get up, when you lie down. These are the Ten Commandments that are meant to be constantly in your consciousness. They are the focus of what you teach your children. So if you want to do a daily practice of it, once a day, take out a Bible, read chapter 20 of Exodus, the beginning chapter 20 in Exodus. It starts with the words, and God spoke all these words saying, and it's the revelation at Mount Sinai and the Ten Commandments. And then follow it with the words of the Shema, which
Mm-hmm.
basically reminds you that this is your core values for your day, for your life.
Right.
And I must tell you, I've been working on this for 14 years now. 2 months ago, when I saw Rav Mordechai Eliyahu spoke about this in one of his books, that you should do this, it
Mm.
changed my life. I do it in the
Wow.
morning, I do it in the evening, and it's a transformative reminder. It's a fulfillment, first of all, of what it says in the Bible. Every day, take heed. Hishamer lecha, take heed. Don't forget the day you stood at Mount Sinai and you heard my voice, because this is the resonance of God's voice in our lives daily.
Mm-hmm.
The Ten Commandments are the echo from Sinai that are meant to awaken what was printed on our souls and printed on our souls then, and to bring our consciousness aligned with these core values and our actions and our speech together with it. So the first step is just become familiar with it, and doing it once a day, or if you want to do it once a week, whatever. It just take the time to read it, meditate on
Right.
it, and that'll lead to many more things.
All right.
You
So
can
let's take a tiny pause for just 1 second. I'm going to open my studio door here. I'm going to yell out to Malka and ask her to bring in something special from the kitchen. I tried to WhatsApp her during when you were talking, but I don't know if she saw it. So hold on 1 second. 1 second. Malka, can I ask you to bring the Ten Commandments from the kitchen, please? All right. Okay, great. So we are live, though. Thank you. That's it's a very, you're saying, read it, learn about it, make it part of your life. You also have a course on it that people can join, and that is found at aseretglobal.org, ASERET, aseretglobal.org. And you have a course there. People can join it. You can make podcasts in English as well. That's great. And Malka just delivered this from the kitchen. This is a 10
beautiful.
Commandments that my father-in-law, Malka's dad, he is a doctor in Texas, and his hobby is woodwork, wood burning, wood carving, wood burning. And he made this, and I was just ecstatic about it. This is a beautiful 10 Commandments.
How awesome is that? Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
I really love it a lot, and it lives in my kitchen. And me and people who listen to my show, know that I'm also an advocate of stuff in your life and in your house, physical things that remind you of the land of Israel. I'm always advocating for drinking Friday night wine from the land of Israel, and having a poster of a picture that you took in the land of Israel. And I think having a 10 Commandments jewelry, a 10 Commandments picture, a Ten Commandments magnet in your house. It just reminds you that you have a value system, that you have a core value system that you live with, that you can think about, and then you come up with something like, this is one of my favorite commandments, or this is something that I'm focusing on right now. It makes a difference. Let's just say hi to some of the folks that have joined us. I think Fernando from Brazil, shalom. Denise says a joyous Chodesh Tov. That's right, the new month of Adar 1. Cecile says, God bless all of you from Virginia. And Marilyn, my good friend, says shalom from North Carolina. Shalom. And even not so far away, Hananya says shalom from Eilat and Chodesh Tov. That's awesome, Hananya. I'm a little jealous. It's probably nice and warm over there. And so it is in Utah. So shalom from Utah. And down a few kilometers down the road is our one of our sister states, which is Kurdistan, or autonomous Kurdistan, the region in North Iraq. And they share a lot with us. I wish that relationship would only grow more. So Sherzad Mamsani says shalom from Kurdistan. And I say shalom to you and salam alaikum right back to you. And Lou says, why are the Ten Commandments not said anymore as part of the Shema prayer like you recommended? Why is that?
Oh my gosh, what a question.
I'll let you answer that in just a second. But just my good friends Michael and Anna Marie, they say, I just ordered my Exodus 2010 Commandments frame from Zazzle. It comes in on Valentine's Day and we're placed next to our picture that we took in Israel 2020. When the Lopez's want something, they when they hear something that touches them, they're there. They don't chew it over. They get it done immediately. So that's awesome. It's a great idea, and I want a picture of that. I want you to send me a picture. I want you to email me yishai@yishaifleischer.com, and I want to see that. And Wendy says shalom from Queens, New York. So folks from all over the world are joining us. And back to Lou's question, if we can, why are the Ten Commandments not said anymore as part of the Shema prayer?
I'm currently reading a 120-page doctorate thesis on that question by a fellow named David Matar, who you might know. Nadia Matar's husband.
Sure.
And he wrote his doctorate thesis, or an MA thesis, on this subject.
Okay.
To summarize it wouldn't do justice to it. Let's just say that he took it upon himself. It's very tersely dealt with in the Talmud. It's not a subject that is widely understood. There's a couple of theories about when and how it actually got removed and why. All I will say is that he does make the case for considering it coming back now at this time as something that, we don't do those things lightly, but there are a number of halachically acceptable ways, which is, like I said, doing it not as part of the formal service, but there's Kriyat Shema Lamita. We say the Shema before we go to sleep. Famous rabbi known as the Shla Kodesh. That's when he said the Aseret Dibrot from the book of Deuteronomy before that.
Right.
He did it that way, and we can also do it in our before the actual formal service, meaning before Baruch Shamar, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Early part in the service where we actually have a reference to saying the Shema. You can do it there as well. That's where halachically you'll find it in some Sidurim placed just before that Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim, the part where we accept upon ourselves our commitment to our mission through the saying of the Shema. That's right. A very good place to say it.
And I heard, and I think that's something that changed my life vis-a-vis the Ten Commandments, was that the Shema phrase, the initial phrase, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, is actually a condensed version of the first two commandments. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, which is the first commandment. Hashem is one, as in one and not divided. It's an against idolatry statement. And so therefore, those first two commandments, which were heard by the Jewish people at Sinai directly from God, not with the intermediary assistance of Moshe, but rather direct from Mipi Gvura, from the heavenly voice himself, and they heard those first two commandments. That is truncated into a phrase, which is, again, not only is it a life phrase, which affirms our value system, but it's also an identity phrase. The Shema Yisrael. Like if you don't know Shema, it's like you're there's something missing in your Judaism. It's like an essential element. And as I tell the story every time, my wife's grandfather, when he was laying in a ditch in a death camp on the day of the Russian liberation of the camp, an officer came up to him and said, "Ich bin a Yid, I am a Jew. Shema Yisrael." That's what he said to him. Shema Yisrael was his way to say, "I am a Jew," and that encapsulates that first phrase, the first two commandments, which is really out of the 10 commandments, the first two commandments are the essential ones. I am God. There's no other God before me, and the rest is commentary on that, on those two, and that's why we heard it direct from the boss himself. He gave us that communication. Rabbi Shawn Schwartz, I feel like we could talk for much longer, but sadly time is up. I do want everybody to please visit the website, which is I'm bringing it up here, which is aseretglobal.org. And there's an online course here that you can go to, and there it is. You can put together your own group. There's sessions, there's booklets, and you can just fill out your name here and start the course. And there's also courses and curricula for schools, and that's very important for day schools and for other people. And I have a feeling that there's people listening to this right now who are going to want to sign up for this course. So it's an excellent opportunity. Rabbi, I want to thank you. Is there any last parting words that you have for us, a story or anything else?
I have a little story that it's on one of my favorite commandments, which is the fifth commandment, to honor your parents. You mentioned how I also grew up in an age where a lot of my friends started calling their parents by their first names, and it was a situation where, and I remember being at one of the schools in Israel. One of the most touching moments we have in the program that you run in Israel was when we do a parents and children evening for the Ten Commandments project, and we bring them together, and the parents actually exchange notes with each other. The kid writes what I appreciate about my parent. The parent writes things that they want their children to know about their values, and they exchange these notes. And I can't tell you how I cry every time I watch this. They're reading this, tears are coming. They hug each other. It's just one of those moments. And at one of these sessions, though, one of the fathers stood up and said, I don't get this stuff. You're supposed to really honor everybody equally. I don't want my kids to honor me specially. And there was sort of silence in the room, and there's a little ambivalence about what he was saying. But this week, I saw an interview with Tom Brady, who just retired from football, the quarterback. So he actually was interviewed, and out of the blue, there's this kid that asked him a question. He said, "Mr. Brady, you're the hero of millions of people and millions of kids. And tell me, who's your hero?" And you see Tom Brady he said, "Well, that's a good question." And he's pondering it, and he comes back and he looks at the camera, and you see a little tear dropping from his eyes. And he said, my dad is my hero." And it was just such a profound moment. Here's this fellow who's, he's revered because he can throw a football, and he's clearly got something besides that. But his hero is his father. And we want to ask ourselves, how do we act in ways that we're heroes to our children? How do we parent in such ways that we can actually create that dynamic? We don't like to be our children's heroes. So somebody asked me that question, and I said, on some level, it's if your children are your hero, if you really respect them and see their potential, they're more likely to reflect that back to you. So the point being that there's a lot of dimensions to all of this, but in some ways it boils down to how we want to live our lives, that we can be really a guide for our children, for our societies, for our families, and for ultimately for the Jewish people becoming the kind of nation that will be a light unto the nations. And it comes down to some simple principles, 10 of them, in fact. And if you review them and live them, we'll realign ourselves with that purpose that we were entrusted with at Mount Sinai.
Rabbi Shawn Schwartz, thank you so much for joining us today. You are one of the Talmidei Muvhakim, a deep student Rabbi Noach Weinberg from Aish. You were in charge of Aish Toronto for a long time, and Russian Aish here in the land of Israel developed it. Today, you are part of this amazing project to bring the Ten Commandments into general consciousness. I recommend everybody check out the website, which is aseretglobal.org. And I want to thank you. And I'm going to myself take upon myself a more daily and didactic study and appreciation and love for the Ten Commandments. And I'm sure that when you just put that on your heart, it starts to grow and be a thing that brings life, joy, morality into our personal lives, our national lives, and hopefully our global lives as well. Rabbi Shalom, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So well put.
All right, folks. There's Rabbi Shalom. Thank you very much for joining us. And it was great being with you. I want to send you a lot of blessings. Allison says, she says, thanks to you both. And Brian Feinstein says, Lech LeShalom, be blessed and go in peace. And all the other folks, I want to send you blessings from the land of Israel to all of you for a great Shabbat and a happy new month. And thank you for all the global friends that have joined us today. And thank you to these platforms that allow us to speak about this. This is when we've just sent the cleaning agent through the pipes. When we talk about the Ten Commandments through the internet, we just cleansed so much and made this whole thing worth it. That God was like, this is why I made the internet. This is why I made the communications revolution, so we could share the word of God, the Aseret HaDibot, the Ten Commandments from the land of Israel, because from Zion shall come forth Torah. So God bless you guys. And Wendy says, thank you so much for this great blessing. Absolutely. And Lou says, great interview. And that's it. That's all we got to do, except for staying strong out there. And if you're listening on the podcast, we'll be back with Table Torah right after this. And if you're here with me live, then God bless you and shalom.